Hello everyone and welcome to this video where we will be talking about what is filter function, what is search function and what is the concept of delegation in Power Apps. So basically what is delegation? Delegation means Power Apps uses delegation to offload the processing of data to the data source when available. So basically there are some data sources which are delegable, there are some data sources which are not delegable. And when we say processing of data, which means filtering, searching, and sorting of the data. So basically, Power App says, hey, there are two options to filter the data. First, you send me all the clients with the name Vikas, which means this is called delegation, which means that you do all the filtering, all the searching, sorting, and you just send me the filtered results. This is the concept of delegation. So basically, Power Apps is telling to the data source that, hey, I will not do the heavy lifting. I will not do any kind of filtering because I will not save the data in my memory. What you do, you send me all the data with the filtering if you are a delegable data source. And sometimes what happens that Power Apps has to do all the filtering by itself in its memory. So which is the condition where Power App says, send me all the clients. I will find the client with the name Vikas myself. Okay. So basically, delegation, when we talk about, let's say you have a very large list in SharePoint and you want to filter the data. So how generally we use the filter function? So you write filter, what is your data source, that is SharePoint list, and some filter condition. Now, since filter, which is a function and it is delegable to a SharePoint data source, Power Apps would send your formula to SharePoint. And this kind of filtering will be done at the SharePoint end, and the filtered results will be sent to the Power Apps. So basically, in this scenario, when we are using the filter function with a SharePoint as a data source, the Power Apps is not processing any data, right? And it is only matching the records which are sent to the SharePoint from Power Apps, and it is an efficient way to do it. Whereas there are some functions or data sources where delegation is not available. So for example, a non-delegable function, for example, search. Search is a function which is not delegable against the SharePoint data source. Now, since search function is not delegable to the SharePoint data source, so basically Power Apps has to do all the processing, means all the processing of the records locally in memory, which means first the records will be sent from SharePoint to the Power Apps, and then Power Apps will be doing all the heavy lifting work, which is the processing of the data locally in memory. In this case, what happens? The data source, which is SharePoint in this case, can only return the first 500 records. You can definitely increase this limit by going at the settings from 500 to a maximum of 2000 records in the Power Apps Studio settings. But again, I will not recommend it. This is not a recommended way because this will definitely impact the performance of your app. So basically what we are saying that what is the basic difference between the search and the filter function? So search definitely is easy to use. Filter, I can say it's very complicated, more complicated as compared to search, but it is very flexible and it is delegable to the SharePoint as a data source. In search, there is a limitation that only you can search for the text fields. But whereas filter, it can be used with any field type. Both search and filter, they are case insensitive. If I talk about search, you can search multiple columns in one single expression when you are using the search function. But for filter, when you are doing the search on the multiple columns, you have to somehow write somehow complex conditions. Now, these are the data sources which understand delegation as of now in today's date when I'm creating this video. So basically SharePoint, SQL Server, Dataverse and Salesforce. These are the four data sources which understand delegation. And this is also very well documented on the Microsoft documentation. So you see here the definition of delegation which is given on the Microsoft article that Power Apps will delegate the processing of data to the data source. rather than moving the data to the app for processing locally. This is the definition of delegation. And if I scroll down further, you can see here delegable data sources. So it talks about Microsoft Dataverse, SharePoint, SQL Server, and Salesforce. So these are the four data sources which are delegable as of now. So let's see this in action now. We will see how to work with a large list considering SharePoint as our data source. Okay. So this is my SharePoint environment, SharePoint Online environment, and I will be using this list as my data source. You can see that it is having more than 2000, more than 5000 records. The current number of records are 8882. So we will be working with this kind of large list in PowerApps. Okay. And if I show you this list, this is the list view which is having multiple columns: title, country, region, city, and so on. So these there are the different columns which are there in the list, and this list is having more than 5000 records. So I am in the Power Apps environment. So the first and foremost step is to make a data connection with our data source, which is the SharePoint list in this case. And this list is a very large list having more than 8000 records. So let's make a data connection with this list first of all. Let's search for SharePoint and let's make a connection with the SharePoint site. My SharePoint site in this case here is POC site. It's taking time to load. It's loaded and we can make a connection to the forecast list details list. So let's make a connection. Now you see here this has been added as a data source in my Power Apps environment. Great. Now let's come to the screen again. Let's add a vertical gallery. And the data source for this vertical gallery I'm going to give as the forecast details. Okay, let's do some small modifications to the layout. Let's say title, subtitle, and body. Okay, and maybe I want to have, for example, 3 columns layout. So I will focus on the 3 columns layout. And what I'm going to do is, let's say rep count is 4. All right, and 3 columns instead 3 columns. Let's stick to title, subtitle, and body. So this is a little modification, and here I can change the rep count to 4 so that I can show the vertical gallery in this way. I'm just making some adjustment on the screen so that we can see the vertical gallery. All right, let's run this app. Now you see here I can see the vertical gallery, right? Now let's add a label here. Let's add a label, and this label, in this label, what I'm going to show is gallery item count. All right, and here I'm going to add the count. I'm going to say count rows, which is there in the vertical gallery, which is gallery 3 dot all items. So you can see this label will start showing me the item count, right? Let's make it a little bigger and make some adjustments. Let's make it 17. Okay, and let's make it bold, and let's change the color of this label to something, let's say blue. All right, so now you see here, even though there are more than 8000 records in my SharePoint list in my backend, which is the data source, still if I run this app, the Power Apps is showing only the gallery item count as 100. And this is the optimization, I will say the performance optimization, which is inbuilt, which Power Apps is using, because SharePoint is a delegable data source. So the moment you scroll down to the below, you see here the data count is going to increase. Now you see it's 200. As soon as I move again to the down of this, to scroll down completely down to this vertical gallery, the count is increasing. Similarly, if I move again, so basically what Power Apps is doing, it is actually fetching the data in batch of 100. So this is a very good performance optimization, so that in one go your data is not getting loaded, it is getting loaded in the batch of 100. Okay, so if I scroll down again, you see the count is increasing. If I scroll down again, the count is increasing 600. If I scroll down again, the count is increasing, and so on. So basically, if there are 8,000 records, more than 8,000 records are there in my SharePoint list, it's a very large list. Okay. But still, the Power Apps is doing the very query optimization. It's querying the data in a very optimized manner, and it is loading and showing the data in batch of 100 only, which we see here, the total gallery item count. All right, we see here. All right, great. Now, let me remove this and let's close this. So this is pretty interesting, right? That what is the number of items you are getting in one query when Power Apps is doing the query to the SharePoint. That is only 100 items are visible in one go. All right. Now we'll see the filter and search in action, that how you can implement the filter and search in this gallery. Okay. Now you see here, if I go to this gallery, currently it is showing me the items. The items property is set to the my data source, which is forecast underscore details. All right. Now what I'm going to do is, let's add a text input so that I can filter the data. I am adding just a text input so that I can filter the data. Let's remove this text input from here. We don't want here. And let's say maybe add a search icon so that it looks like a search, that we are doing some kind of search. All right. Great. So let me do some adjustment. Okay. Now you see here, we have added a text box which will allow us to do the searching or the filtering, and we can filter the data based on this text box. Now, a little bit of for this text box, what I can do, I can rename this text box as txt underscore search large data. So I'm just renaming the text box. I have renamed the text box, and I can also change the padding from 12 to 40 so that when users will start writing it, they can start writing from here. Okay. Now what we want to do is, we want to filter our data. We want to filter our data based on this search box. Whatever query a user is writing, I want to do the filtering. Okay. So we'll start looking at first of all the search function, how the search function works. Okay. So if let's say I go to the gallery, okay, and I write a query here, I change the query from let's say search. I want to search something on my data source. Okay. And it asks for that what will be the text, where from where the text will come. So I will say txt underscore search large data dot text. Correct. And what is the column you want to do the searching on? So I want to do the searching on simple title column of the list. Okay. So title column of the list, I want to do the searching. This is the formula which I have written, and I'm using the search here. Now you see, automatically when I write this formula, two things have happened. And now this is very important to understand when it comes to search and delegation. Okay. When I have written the query, when I've changed the query and I've applied the search function, and we have seen in the PPT that search is not delegable to the SharePoint as a data source. Okay. So two things have happened here. And it's very important to note what is the two things which has happened. The first thing, it is showing me the message now. And what is the message it is showing? You can definitely see the message. You see here, delegation warning. The search part of this formula might not work correctly on large data set. This is the message it has started showing. So your small yellow triangle you can see at the top of the gallery. This is the first thing which has happened when I'm using the search function, which is not delegable to the SharePoint data source. The second thing which has happened, it is only searching on the 500 records. The first 500 records, the search will be done. This is very important to understand. So if I say here 3, okay, it will search all the records which is having contains. So search basically works like contains, right? So if I write 3, it is showing me one item although, but if I remove 3, it will only search in the first 500 records. But in my SharePoint list, there are more than 8,000 records, right? Even if I scroll down, it is not showing more number of items. It will only search in the first 500 records from my data source, which is SharePoint list, and which is not correct, because I might be searching something which is more than, let's say, 500 seconds record, or maybe 600 record. But when you are using search, it is a concept which is showing the delegation warning. The search part of this formula might not work on large data set. Okay, so these are the two things which you have to remember when you are using search, because search is not a delegable function to the SharePoint. Now, here one thing also I want to share with you, that definitely you can increase this limit from 500 to 2000. So if you go to the settings of your Power App Studio, okay, there is an option from where you can increase this limit. So you see here data row limit. Set how many rows are retrieved from server based connection where delegation is not supported. So you can definitely change to 2000. 2000 is the maximum limit which can be changed, and if you say 2002, it will show you that this value needs to be between 1 and 2000. Okay, but still I will say this changing the value from 500 to 2000, it will definitely impact the performance of your app. Okay, so this was related to the search. Now if I change my query to, let's say for example, filter, I want to implement the query on the filter, and let's see what happens. Now when I'm doing the filter on my data source, right, when I'm doing the filter on my data source, I can definitely say this record dot, okay, title. So this record dot title is equal to txt underscore search large data dot text. Okay, now this is again a query which I have written on the filter. Okay, I have used the filter function, and now you see the moment I use the filter function, the moment I use the filter function, that warning has gone. That warning has gone from my gallery. Now, if I want to search something here, let's say 3M, okay, it will make a query and the gallery count is 1. You see, one item with the same query, because we are using just filter. Filter is not like search. Filter will not work like search. You have to write the complete title, then only it will search. Okay. Now let's coming to the search again. Let's do the search again, and let's see one more peculiarity which I want to show you for the search. Okay, so let's change our query again to search, and we are searching on the data source which is forecast details. And let's say what is the text. So txt underscore search large data is my text box dot text what I want to search. Right, now I can search for the title column. Definitely I can search for the title column, right? And this is very much fine. We have seen that it is showing a delegation warning. Correct, it will show a delegation warning. And if I search for, let's say, only 3, it will show me all the data wherever 3 is present. Okay, this is also fine, that's not a problem. Now the important thing for the search, please remember, which I want to show you, that search which we saw, that it's limited to search for only for the text field. So let's see this in action. What we can do is, let's remove everything. Let's remove everything in our query. Let's do a simple forecast details as the items. All the items will be visible. Correct. What we can do is, in this gallery, let's select the first item, and let's add a text label here. Okay. Let's add a text label. And in this text label, let's say I want to showcase the opportunity ID column from my list, opportunity ID. Okay, so you see here now the data table, now not the data table, the gallery is showing you the opportunity ID also. Now for your information, opportunity ID at the back end is a number type of column. Okay, at my back end, the opportunity ID, which is a column, is of number type. Okay, now what I want to do is, I want to apply the search query again using the search function on my data source. So what I will say, I will again add the search on my data source. Okay, and txt underscore search large data dot text. All right, comma on the column what I want to search. Since we talked about that search can only work with single line of text type of column. It cannot work with complex types of column or any other type of column type. It can only work with single line of text column type. So definitely it is going with title. It is going to work with title. That's not a problem at all. And you can see it is showing me the data where 3M is there. Right, now the moment I add another column, the moment I add opportunity ID, let's say I want to add now search on opportunity ID as well. Okay, let's make the O capital. All right, so now I want to search on the opportunity ID. Now it has started giving me error. Now what is the error here? What is the error here? You see, opportunity ID, the specified column opportunity ID does not exist. Okay, which is fine. Okay, let's say it doesn't understanding opportunity ID. Now what is the error? The specified column opportunity ID does not exist, although it is existing, in my list. Now let's do one thing. Let's go to the list settings and see what is happening with the opportunity ID. Okay, so this is the opportunity ID column you see here. This is there in the list, but it's still showing that it cannot find this particular column, which is opportunity ID. Okay, it says it does not exist. All right, so I click on this opportunity ID. What I noticed is that the internal name for this opportunity ID is something else, field underscore 6. Okay, all right, so let's try this now. So I will say field underscore 6. Hey, still there is an error. Now the error, what is the error now? You see here, the error might have changed this time. What the error it is saying now? Okay, so now the error is how I can see. Okay, so this is the problem with the formula bar. You see here, the function search has some invalid arguments. Okay, wrong column type expects text type, which means you cannot search on the number column type when you are using the search function. And that's what I wanted to showcase you in this particular video, that what are the limitations with the search. First is the delegation warning. Second limitation of using search is the gallery count, how many data will be returned. So maximum 2000 and minimum only first 500 records you can do the searching. And the third and the most important is the search only works on the filtration of the single line of text column. So if there is a text column, definitely you can use the search and do the filtration. But if there is any other type of column, be it lookup or be it person field type, number type, you cannot use the search function. All right. Now coming to our basics again. So we were using filter. So let's use the filter again, filter function. Filter was not giving you any delegation warning because, as I mentioned, filter is something which is delegable to SharePoint as a data source. So what we did was this item, or maybe this record. So this record, right, dot title, this record dot title, this record dot title is equal to txt underscore search large data dot text. Correct. Now this is going to work perfectly fine, and it is not going to give me any delegation warning. You see here, if I run this app, if I'm searching for 3M, it is showing me the data and it is showing me the gallery count without any warnings or delegation warnings, something like that, right? But now how to make the similar experience, just like we have the experience with the search. Correct, we can have that experience with the filter function as well. So I go to the gallery. In the filter function, now there are some functions which are delegable to the SharePoint data source. Now I will go to again the documentation, Microsoft official documentation. It says PowerApps delegable functions and operations for SharePoint. This is very important to understand. You see here filter. Now there is a very good function I always like, it starts with. So we are going to use the starts with function in our query now, which will again start behaving like a search. But this is delegable to SharePoint. This is very important to understand, that we can use starts with in our queries while using filter function again, right? So what we can say is that I can change my query a little bit, very little bit here, correct? And I will say starts with, I will use the function starts with, okay? And basically what we can say, that this record dot title comma txt search, and at the end I can end my query. Okay, now if I run this app, you see there are no delegation warning. First of all, there are no delegation warning, and if I run this app, even if I remove m now, it is going to show me the values. Okay, so it is currently behaving like a search functionality only, and without any delegation warning. Okay, so that's all for this video. What concept I wanted to showcase is that how you can use search function wisely, filter function wisely, and how you can overcome the delegation warning when working with the large list, large data set, for example SharePoint list in this case. Thank you.